Greeting Culture Warriors. I'm Jeff Vieira, author of Culture is Everything, and welcome to Culture is Everything, the Dispatches from the Front podcast. This is where we take business news of interest and view it from a unique cultural perspective. Today we have another interesting story for you. This one came over the transom through LinkedIn. Wayne Strickland, a connection of mine on LinkedIn, chair of the Vistage Group, author, keynote speaker, very smart guy, and one of the things that he does is he always posts really interesting content. So appreciate you doing that, Wayne. I want to talk today about a story that he posted on Saturday. And it's from www.strategybusiness.com. There's a hyphen between strategy and business. The title is, "In a Crisis, Companies Must Know Their Purpose. Boards must drive the effort to answer a fundamental question. Why does our organization exist?" A crisis brings values to the fore. Though executives were talking urgently about the purpose of business before COVID-19, the topic is even more important now. Organizations across all sectors have a part to play in the shared goal of flattening the disease's growth curve. At healthcare organizations, of course, employees are aware of their critical role. But the same mentality extends to enterprises of all types. Scholastic is creating new at-home teaching materials. Clorox is expanding production capacity of and consumer access to germ-killing products. And just about every food retailer is staying open despite the danger to ensure that basic nutrition is available. Other companies are stepping up in their own brave ways, guaranteeing employee salaries during shutdowns, giving paid leave to factory workers with children who would otherwise be stranded at home, and repurposing production lines to focus on the most needed life and safety products. This moment in history provides an opportunity and a spur for all organizations to ground themselves in their purpose. That is, to focus intensely on the core questions. Why do we exist? Why are we here? Whose needs are we here to meet? Leadership plays a critical role in answering these questions, and more importantly, in delivering on the promise inherent in them. And though CEOs and top executives must be front and center in this recalibration, it is clear that boards will also play a significant role in closing the purpose gap, the distance between an organization's stated aims and its lived behavior. Why? In many instances, board members have longer tenures and timeframes in which to operate than CEOs. Across the S&P 500, for example, board member tenure averaged 10.7 years in 2018 compared to only 5 years for CEO tenure. Accordingly, boards of directors must take charge in overseeing their company's long-term direction and vitality, which means enforcing accountability for issues of purpose, longevity, and social impact. What's more, boards are being explicitly asked by powerful asset managers to step up. This proxy voting season, some of the largest asset managers are communicating to boards that they are serious about board oversight for environmental, social, and governance issues by outlining a new set of metrics for reporting on non-financial performance. Drawing from our prior work on this topic, we've identified two main tenets of purpose with which senior management and boards must engage deeply: stakeholder capitalism and authentic action. Ambitious corporate purpose statements have become almost mandatory over the last decade, but too often they are inspirational statements written to capture the good intentions of an enterprise rather than its reality. In other instances, purpose statements continue to reaffirm the narrow goal of creating value for shareholders. Recently, many companies have rewritten their purpose statements in response to the overly simplistic idea that millennials, and only millennials, want to do good at work. And so the purpose statement tells them how their company does that good. The truth is bigger than the ideas contained in these simple statements. Now more than ever, people want to work for companies with missions and business philosophies that resonate with them intellectually and emotionally. They want to know why they are going to work each day. In our recent Harvard Business Review article, we argued that the core question any organization must answer when communicating purpose starts with its customers. That is, what groups or persons' needs are the companies being paid to meet? If the answer to that question is either not clear or not motivating to employees, the organization has a problem. Companies are born, survive, and thrive because some group of people is willing to continue to pay them to do what they do. This is why focusing solely on writing inspirational purpose statements is misguided. CEOs and boards must wrestle with and resolve the tough but critical questions that underlie their statements. What is their firm doing and why? And then they must work with management to close the purpose gap by figuring out how their organization can deliver on its purpose in its everyday activities. Okay, so it'll be no secret to those of you who have read the book why this article resonates with me in particular. You'll hear a couple of things in there. They kept talking about closing the purpose gap. What is the purpose gap? The purpose gap is the gap between what we're doing every day and what we say we're supposed to be doing. That sounds awfully familiar to the concept I talk in the book about the culture being that manner by which a company, an organization's values are communicated, understood, and lived. And much of the book concerns itself with how do we close the gap between the culture we desire and the behaviors we have. The culture as desired, the culture as lived. And in my model, the culture, the whole point of the culture is to better help the company to fulfill its purpose. So in other words, I read this article and I see in slightly different terminology the main thesis of culture is everything. The company has a purpose. That purpose has been under threat with this pandemic. It's been clarified in a lot of ways. Some companies have responded to this by moving from being a producer of one type of product to a totally different type of product. We used to produce electronics cabinets, and now we produce ventilators. We used to make jeans, now we make masks. But that's not necessarily changing the company's purpose. Because in the case of the electronics cabinets, they were being used for whatever they were being used for. In the case of the ventilators, they're being used to save lives. But they're still fulfilling a use in society. They produce electronics goods that are being used by their customers. In the case of the jeans and the masks, they're just simply shifting between one product that may be underused and moving to another one that's in high demand. But it's still a product that's made of cloth, still has to be high quality, still has to be something that's demanded by the customer. Probably not a huge change in purpose for that company. So some companies are changing what they do not because their purpose has changed, but because demand has changed. In other companies, we're really looking at whether the purpose that we had is the purpose we should have going into the future. So we think about things like, say, companies which previously insisted upon everyone piling into the same office. Now, their underlying values associated with that purpose probably implied that they felt they had to have everyone physically together in order to do things. But that value is really being questioned now because we're having to work remotely. So there have been some companies, some cultures that were highly resistant to working remotely. There are some leaders who simply could not make the transition to the notion that they do not have to see their employee, they do not have to physically be with their employee in order for their employee to work for them. There were some that have a high degree of problem with trust and could not bridge that gap previously. Now they're getting an education in how to manage remotely. And that could certainly lead to a change in how we do things. You have some companies that are in industries previously that look a little bit different nowadays than they did before the pandemic. So you think about anything that relied on a high degree of touch. We covered in our very first episode, we talked about a company that made electric scooters, and these scooters would be shared in urban environments. Okay, well, that presupposes a lot of people in the streets covering distances that they don't want to cover on foot and sharing equipment. Well, do you want to share equipment with someone who might have been infected with the virus? Probably not. That probably causes you to rethink a bit your purpose. And again, maybe not so much even in that case of the overall purpose. They're providing mobility, but more so how they do it. How do you provide mobility in an era of pandemic? You know, we've seen a great difference in the viewing habits of people. Can't gather together in movie theaters, can't gather together in concert halls, but there's still a need for entertainment, for distraction from the woes of the day. There's still a need to feel some sort of connection to other people who are partaking of that entertainment at the same time you are, but cannot physically be together. And so you see the rise, or the continued rise, I should say, of companies that are providing streaming content. You see the rise of platforms such as Zoom, where people can easily get together and have a shared experience. We'd had some trends where, as kind of a medium step between remote work and office work, we had some hoteling space where people could work. But that's probably on the decline now because people are pushing more for the flexibility to work from their home where it's safer. We've seen the rise of e-commerce. So retail was already on the ropes because the customer experience in the e-com space had gotten so good and the selection so wide. And now there's a wonder, you have to wonder if those strip malls are ever going to come back. So the purpose of those companies, when you think about it, previously they were really built around having a presence in the local community. And perhaps that's changing. So this pandemic is an invitation to really think about our purpose, really think about our values, and continue to do the hard work to close the gap between the culture we desire and the culture that we live. So a terrific article here. I should note that the author is Sally Blount. She's the Michael L. Nemmers Professor of Strategy, former Dean at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. So excellent read, and a pretty good companion for what I lay out in Culture is Everything, the book. So please check that out when you get a chance. But more importantly, think about your company in light of the pandemic. What was the purpose before, and is that purpose still operative today? Think about yourself and what you want out of your career. Before this all happened, were you aiming for the same objective that you are now that this has happened? Do you have the same priorities or have they changed? And do your values need to be reprioritized along with them? Because remember, folks, a job is a job, but culture is everything. Have a great day.